It came up on the Super Moves webinar as well, where a broker mentioned having cybersecurity insurance. And Jack, I know you mentioned you have it. Can you talk a little bit more
Yes.
about what drove you to get it? I know we talked about phishing being an attempt and in Dave's presentation about how theft can happen. So I'm curious about your experience with cybersecurity insurance.
Let's go back a little bit. I will admit I did have a vehicle stolen, and it was kind of one of those situations where I couldn't get the load covered and everything seemed okay. And I went online and I went on Safer and I pulled the insurance, and the company had a decent track record and a history. And then the next thing you know, the vehicle is picked up and there was no pictures uploaded on Super Dispatch. And they're still in communication with me for like the 5 or 6 days that it's supposed to be in transport, and then boom, they just disappear. Having been through that experience where I then had to pay my customer back out of my own pocket because there was no insurance that was going to cover it, and having that loss, it started to make me look into and say, hey, what can I do to, number one, protect myself so that I could, as a company, I could stay in business, but also that I could go to my customers who are shipping, a lot of higher end vehicles and say, hey, I have an insurance policy now because I know that fraud is such a big thing in the industry where it's not even just fraud. It's more of a cybersecurity slash social engineering where I am insured, where if a scammer goes ahead and creates a profile of a carrier or steals a good carrier's profile, and then a vehicle goes missing by me, my insurance will cover it. And it's not cheap. It was a big investment. I had done the math and it added probably between $5 and $7 per vehicle that I ship every year, which may not sound like a lot to a lot of people, but anybody that works in the industry knows that a lot of times we're working on very, very thin margins. And to add on top of all the other costs that we have, that extra $5 or $7, that could be the difference between being competitive versus, over 50 or 60 loads versus not, and actually being able to get jobs because everybody's very price conscious. But having had that experience of this type of a social engineering and fraud, it pushed me to go and find this type of insurance. And it wasn't easy to find either. It took three separate brokers until one actually was able to find an insurance carrier that was willing to even write a policy for what I needed. And then after the first year, after having no claims, the cost of the policy doubled. The actual cost of the actual policy and the deductible, they both doubled. And it was very interesting. They basically said, "Hey, we've reassessed the risk, and in the last year, it's gotten, I know nothing's happened to you, but it's gotten so bad that this is just where we're at." And I know that my customers, when they come to me, they understand that, hey, I might be paying a little bit of extra, but I understand that if something happens to my vehicle, that I'm going to be taken care of by this company because they're either going to cover it themselves or they have insurance that will make sure that I'm still going to not get screwed and left holding the bag. Because I know that there are a lot of other stories in auto transport where a lot of these fly by night brokerages come in and vehicles are, getting all over the place. And now people are out tens of thousands of dollars or vehicles are stolen, and there's nothing they can do about it. There's nobody to go back to say, hey, they just shut down and they disappear and then you're just stuck. So that was something that pushed me to go ahead and look for this, extra insurance that I currently carry.